Now is the time we've been waiting for our first guest of the evening. We're going to bring on Aquarius here. How are you doing, Aquarius?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. It's so cool to have another drummer survivor. I think I've only had maybe you might be the third other than myself on this show that's a drummer and a breast cancer
Oh,
survivor. We had Lori Peters, who was with Skillet. We had Catastrophic, who is in our Survivors Rock breast cancer consignment community Facebook group. And now
mhm.
you
All
here.
right.
Yeah,
Third time's a
yeah.
charm.
I know, right on, right on. So it's really cool to have an opportunity to get to know you a little better and learn some about your history. I thought it'd be cool, Aquarius, if you would. I wanted to know how you got into drumming. Like, how old were you, and what kind of drew you towards drumming?
Well, the first song that I remember that really oh, I could just feel it in my heart was the Little Drummer Boy. I loved the Little
Oh,
Drummer Boy song when I
yeah.
was really, really young, probably, about 4 or 5 years old. And I've always loved the drums. I love the sound of drums. I was always drawn to that sound on any record that I listened to. Um, and my favorite group, one of my favorite groups growing up was The Who. And my brother had a Who poster on his door. So when he opened his door, it would face into my room. And of course, I saw that massive drum set, and I'm just like in awe of it. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to play the drums. And I was about 13 years old, and I told my dad I wanted to play the drums. And this was in the early 80s. And he's basically said, well, why don't you play something feminine like the flute? I was like, I'm not playing the
Oh
flute.
no,
I ain't
no,
playing the
yeah.
flute. No,
Well, I mean, it's
not
there's
doing
nothing against the flute, but
it.
when
Nothing
you want to
against the
play
flute, but
drums, it's just not the same thing.
no, it's not the same. And that just
Right.
wasn't me. My
Yeah.
brother, I had an older brother. He was in band, high school band, and he knew how to play guitar and bass and keyboard and saxophone. Um, and uh, so anyway, I really wanted to play the drums. So I didn't join high school band, but I asked my dad, if I save my money up, can I buy my own drum set? And he's like, yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I don't think he really believed I was going to do it. And I did. And I bought my own drum set when I was 13. And I taught myself how to play and sing. And my brother and I and my little sister, we had a family band. And we played in the family band for several years.
That's so cool. So you first decided you wanted to play drums at 13, and then you began doing what to raise enough funds to buy a drum set? What did you do to raise
My
money?
birthday money, Christmas money, chores around the house, anything I could. And then, of course, I had to look up, purchasing a drum set through the paper classifieds at that time, because that was before the internet. And so I bought an orange pearl drum set with Zildjian cymbals, and that was my first
Wow.
set. And I taught myself how to play, and I practiced, and I just started out slow and sped up, and I really just played by feel because I never joined band. I never learned how to read music. I just really played by feel. I taught myself how to sing as well because I love singing. So
Right.
I taught myself how to sing and play drums at the same time.
That's so crazy. So what kind of music were you playing along to at 13?
Classic rock, The Who, the Eagles, the Animals, the Rolling Stones. A lot of stuff I still play now. But
That's so
yeah,
cool. So you had a sibling that was a sister as well. So your brother was a guitar player and he played a lot of other instruments as well. But what did your sister do?
she was a bass player. She was a reluctant bass player. she
Reluctant bass
she
player.
yeah, my brother kind of made her play bass. I wanted to play the drums. I wanted to sing and be in the band. She didn't necessarily want to do that. She actually ended up joining band and playing oboe, but she didn't really want to play bass at the time, and that just wasn't her thing. And so she quit the band, and then my brother and I just became a duo, and we played in Deep Ellum, and we'd busk on the streets, back in early adulthood. Eventually, I ended up um, going to college, got married, had kids, had a career. And so I only played like once a year for about 25 years. And I've always wanted to get back into playing drums, but, with family and career and kids, it just wasn't possible at that time to really be able to do that. And then about 7 years ago, I still wanted to play drums, did not want to give it up. I was like, well, my kids are old enough. Life has changed now. I'm in a different chapter of my life. And so I decided to get back into playing drums again, and um, played with another band for a couple of years, and eventually started my own band, Aquarius All-Star Band.
That's awesome. How often are you guys playing?
Well, let's see. Right now, we're just playing maybe like once a month right now since my cancer diagnosis. But before that, before I received my cancer diagnosis, I mean, I personally was playing 2 to 4 times a week, while I'm working full time as well. So we were
Wow,
playing
that's
quite
crazy.
often. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was playing
yeah,
with my band. I was subbing for other bands as well. So
right.
I was extremely busy. Momentum was really, really picking up, for us. And I mean, that's all I did was, eat, sleep, work, music. That's pretty
Right.
much it.
Well,
Mhm.
so like you said, your cancer's diagnosis made a big dent in that and in your progress. So tell us how that happened. How did you learn that you had breast cancer?
Well, I mean, every year I go get my yearly mammogram. I was always on top of that. Um, and um, this past year, March 28th, 2022, went for my regular yearly mammogram. Um, and they said they looked like they might have found something, so they took a more diagnostic mammogram, and it was there that the doctor said that they believe I have ductal carcinoma in situ, DCIS cancer. And my grandmother also had breast cancer when she was either in her late 50s, early 60s. So that was always in the back of my head because, I'm in my mid 50s. Um, so it's not that I was expecting it. Of course, I never, wanted it, hoped I had it or anything like that. It was just always something in the back of my head. And it was kind of weird because I had a feeling even before I got diagnosed, I had this feeling of urgency. It was a feeling of like impending doom. It was just a feeling, and I didn't know what it was. But because of that feeling, I was playing in my band and playing different gigs as much as I possibly could. I felt like I had a deadline. I don't know how else to describe it, maybe just a sixth sense about it. But I just tried to play as much as possible, live my life as full as possible at that time, because I just had a feeling, and I guess it's just a gut feeling. Um, and then this happened, and I just knew. I was like, that's the feeling. I was like, this is because of this diagnosis, of cancer. Now, when they first diagnosed me, they said that if I was going to get cancer, this is the one you want to get because it's caught early. It's treatable, and they thought it was just going to be in the milk ducts only. Um, so they wanted to do a stereotactic biopsy, and the place that I went to was charging an arm and a leg. So actually had to spend a little time trying to find some place that wasn't so expensive. Eventually, I did find some place that could do the biopsy at a third of the price. I did that. They sent that off to pathology, um, and they said, yes, you do have cancer. Um, Now, I work in the healthcare field, so I'm all about second opinions. So I got my own second opinion. I arranged that to happen. I had my sample sent to another lab just to reconfirm, because I knew whatever treatment I was going to have, I didn't want to go into it lightly. I wanted to go in there fully informed and make sure that the diagnosis was correct. Um, and so I arranged for that. Unfortunately, the diagnosis came back, and it was um, DCIS. It was cancer, and so we had to, they said that you need to do a lumpectomy. Um, they thought they could go ahead and get out that one tumor. They thought it was just one tumor. I thought they could get that out with the lumpectomy, maybe do a few rounds of radiation, take a anti-estrogen pill because I was also estrogen positive. Also, it was diagnosed as HER2 positive cancer, which is an aggressive type of cancer. But if caught early and treated aggressively, then the chance of recurrence is lower. And so I actually ended up plane throughout the summer, like kind of living my best life that I could until before I had to deal with this. Because really everything was so surreal when I first was diagnosed. Like I couldn't really believe it. I felt like it was I was watching someone else with this diagnosis and going through life. I didn't feel like it was really me. And I didn't know what to expect because cancer is such a big word, but there's so many different types of cancer, so many different types of treatment, um, so many different variables. And a lot of it I did not know, even though I was in the healthcare field. That's just something I didn't want to know about. But I had, to get sped up on the information pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
totally. I was gonna ask, and also just for anybody who's just joining, want to let everybody know that we're talking to Aquarius. She's a breast cancer survivor and a drummer. If you joined late, be sure and watch the replay so you could hear the story about how she got into drumming. So, whenever you were diagnosed and you went and got a second opinion, and then they told you that they thought you could just have a lumpectomy, did you also feel like getting a second opinion on that, or how many? Like, at what different times in the process did you go for a second opinion, or was it just the one at the beginning?
Well, I mean, I did the one in the beginning. I also reached out to different people. I actually have a drummer friend who also she had got diagnosed with breast cancer a couple of years ago, and I, listened to her story. I know I reached out to you as well. I reached out to a couple of other people just to see if there's anything else that I needed to be, thinking about or considering. From the looks of it, at first, it looked like a lumpectomy. That's all that was going to be needed. A friend of mine who's a hairstylist, Dolly, she actually helped get me in touch with your expert here on your breast cancer constituent, Dr. O'Shaughnessy. So she knew her, and someone, a acquaintance that we have, was also seeing her as well. And um, so I ended up going to her, and she's my oncologist. And I also got her opinion on if this was the right steps for me to take. At the time, and at the what the biopsy indicated at that time, that is what I needed to do, was to get a lumpectomy. And I did have that lumpectomy on August 5th. Well, the pathology report came back from that lumpectomy, and I wasn't expecting it. So I was kind of shocked when they called me and said that you're going to have to have a double mastectomy. And I'm just like, what? How can I have a double mastectomy now when initially I was told if you're going to have a cancer, this is the best cancer to have? How did it get from that to now I have to have a double mastectomy and chemo? I didn't understand that. But what happened when the lumpectomy, that pathology report came back, and it indicated that they did not get clear margins. And that's the goals when they do the lumpectomies, that they do get clear margins to know that the cancer is not spreading. And they did not get clear margins. So there was still more area that there was cancer in. They also found out, instead of it just being isolated in the milk duct, that actually it was starting to spread. So now, instead of it just being DCIS, it was also invasive as well. Whereas before it did not indicate it was invasive
So,
because it was so. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah. No, I was just gonna ask. So you said that you were diagnosed in March of 2022, right? And then
Hmm.
you didn't have the lumpectomy until August. So
Hmm.
that's 5 months. What happened in that 5 month period?
Um, well, part of it was getting the second opinion. Part of
Uh-huh.
it was getting the uh, finding a less expensive place so I could get that stereotactic
Uh-huh.
biopsy as well. And part of it was just my own not wanting to deal with it. To be honest, I mean, it was really hard for me to process this.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I
because my
know. I
life
know what
was
you
kind of turned upside down. You
absolutely.
know,
Yeah.
I have a family. I'm married. I have kids. I'm a grandma, and I,
Totally.
I work full time.
Yeah.
But that's besides the band stuff too. So it's
Yeah.
just like I
Yeah,
was like,
I was
I'm
just
not
making
ready for
sure.
it.
Yeah, I was just making sure I didn't miss like that there was
No.
any treatment or anything in
Mm.
that 5 month period, or if it was just kind of like trying to get your ducks in a row and trying
Yeah, it
to.
was kind of
I mean,
getting my
because
ducks
that
in a row. Hmm.
it's a big thing to come to terms with a diagnosis of cancer, like you said, and
Yeah.
what's cool is it's clear that you wanted knowledge and that you wanted to understand, and knowledge is power. And so you were learning through this process too, in this time period where you were learning, okay, here's this one opinion, here's the second opinion, this is what type of breast cancer, you're learning about what that means, and again
Hmm.
finding another, less expensive route and all of those things. And so then we get to the lumpectomy, and just to further explain what you were describing with the margins for those watching. So yeah, as Aquarius was explaining, when a lumpectomy is done, or any given a double mastectomy, they check to see the tissue that's left behind around where the tumor was, and then they test that to see if there's any cancer cells in the remaining tissue. And so yeah, like Aquarius was saying, the goal is whenever the tumor's removed, or if you had a double mastectomy, that any of the remaining tissue be cancer free, essentially. And so what Aquarius is saying here is that when they did the lumpectomy, that was not the case, and they realized they were going to have to do more. I'm curious though, what was it that lent them to saying a double mastectomy? Because at this point, aren't they just looking in one breast?
They are just looking at one breast. Well, what it was is that they said the type of cancer that I had, actually, what they found from the pathology report after the lumpectomy was that it was scattered. They said, just think of like broken glass or confetti, and you just throw it out and it's just scattered everywhere. They ended up finding that there was more cancer in that breast. It wasn't just that one tumor. It was a lot of different small areas, and it would have been almost impossible for them to get every single little cancer
Wow.
cell. It's like trying to pick up confetti,
Yeah.
trying to pick up broken shards of glass.
Wow.
It would have just been impossible. And
That's
it was at that
that's
point,
scary thing
yeah,
to
it's
hear. Oh my
scary.
gosh, yeah, it's like, oh, it's
Yeah,
confetti, and you're like, ah, oh my gosh, get it out, right?
right. I know. It's like
Yeah,
how
yeah.
it just keeps getting worse.
I know,
It's
no,
like,
come on, yeah, let's do this tomorrow or whatever. Wow, okay, all right. So take us from there. Sorry to keep interrupting. I just want to make
no,
sure I
that's
got your
fine.
whole story.
Excuse me.
No
No
worries.
problem. Um, that's when, yes, they could have just taken the right breast off, but then, of course, then I didn't know if I was going to get it in the other breast or not. I didn't want to take that chance, and they kind of said the same thing. You don't want to have to go through this again if you don't have to. And I had read lot of different people's stories that have gotten lumpectomies, and you know, maybe on down the road they might have to get another one. Some people I know had 4 lumpectomies, and eventually, the cancer has spread and to the lymph nodes. Um, so I just didn't want to take that chance. So I went on ahead and opted for the double mastectomy, which is what they recommended as well. Um, they did take 3 lymph nodes. Thankfully, my lymph nodes were not affected. Um, but I would have to start chemo as soon as I recovered from the surgery, which was it was a very difficult surgery, and I've had lots of surgeries in my lifetime, and this was definitely the hardest one physically. Um, I was definitely the weakest I've ever been physically, the most vulnerable I've ever been physically, and it took the longest for me to regain my strength physically from this surgery. And I've had it like that. I've had other ones. Unfortunately, I have my punch cards filled up on surgeries. I
Oh no, that's
This is
never a good
probably
thing.
like my 12th surgery I've had in my
Oh my
life, and it's
gosh.
like,
Well, that's
yeah,
for we'll have to get into that in a whole other broadcast when we have more time, because I
right.
want to hear about it. So how long did it take you for you to recover? Because like I remember when I had my double mastectomy. Now I didn't do reconstruction, but my recovery was about 6 weeks. Do you recall how long your recovery was?
Yeah, I would say 6 to 8 weeks it took me to recover. I think if I was younger, I would have bounced back faster. I'm not that I'm real old, but it does take longer the older you get. And I'm just not just recovering, but recovering enough for me to drum again.
Oh yeah,
And
that's what we know
that's a
as
different
important.
story.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No.
that's a different type of stamina,
Uh-huh.
different type of strength that's needed to do that,
Right.
lugging equipment and all of that stuff. So it wasn't just going about my daily life, but also being able to drum again. And that was definitely my goal, to be able to come back and drum again. And there were times where I had my doubts, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, you're strong, you can do it." It's like, well, I know I'm strong. I don't want to prove it. I already know I'm strong. I'm not trying to prove anything. But, sometimes physically it was really hard. Mentally, other than the chemo brain, mentally, I was fine. Spiritually, I was fine. but it really took a lot out of me physically. I mean, even now recovering from chemo and doing the immunotherapy, it's kind of hills and valleys, um, that I'm not as strong as I could be. I know I'm not. I'm pushing myself. I do push myself. I'll be honest with that, because I don't want to give into it. I don't want to give into cancer. I don't want to give into the side effects. I don't. It's like, this is not my terms. I didn't choose this. I didn't pick this. I don't want this. And so I'm doing everything I can to overcome it, even if it's just through sheer willpower and
Yeah.
mental fortitude to get through it.
Totally.
Because it's like,
Yeah.
this is not the life I want.
Right.
I don't want to, end the things that I'm passionate about because of
Right.
cancer. I don't want to do that.
I got you.
So,
So Aquarius, tell me, did you decide to have reconstruction, or are you planning for that, or no?
yes, actually, I'm scheduled to do reconstruction at the end of July.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
are you currently in chemo right now, or have you
I'm
completed
not.
chemo?
I did a 12 weeks of Taxol, and that started in October. So basically, right towards the end of my, 6-week recovery, that I started chemo for 12 weeks every week, and that lasted until January 6th. And I've been doing Herceptin, which targets the HER2 positive protein, which is the type of cancer that I had. And I'm having to do that for a year. So every 3 weeks for 1 year, I have to do immunotherapy. And I'm also taking letrozole, which is a anti-estrogen tablet, because the cancer that I had also was estrogen receptive. So the estrogen was causing it to grow. And of course, all of those things cause side effects. The chemo, I lost my hair. They said you'll start losing your hair about the second time after you do chemo. Well, they were right. Yeah, about the second time after.
It's like right on the money, isn't it? It's kind
Right,
of
it
creepy
was.
in a
It
way.
was.
It's like I was
I
like,
know. I'm just
whoa,
like,
almost to
I
the
know. I'm just like
day.
brushing my hair, and I'm like, oh my
Oh,
God, I can't believe this
right.
chunk that came out of my head.
Yeah, yeah,
And I held on to my hair as long as possible. I know
yeah.
some people will shave it off right away. I was more stubborn. I mean, my hair, I had a lot of hair. It was long. I've always had a lot of hair. It's always been long. And that was just something that I didn't want to give up, right away. Finally, about a week before Thanksgiving, I was like, okay, give it up. There's hardly anything there anymore. So finally, just started cutting it off, and then eventually shaved it off. Wore caps, and um, did a lot of caps at first, especially during the winter time because it was cold. I'd get cold a lot, um, and eventually, transitioned over to wearing different types of wigs, which I never wore wigs in my whole life, and I had so much hair, I never had a need to. So that was a whole learning experience too. All the different things about wigs. I just like, okay, I'm learning all these things I never really needed to know or cared to know, but
Yeah.
that's the situation I was in.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
you
Totally.
know,
Well, I want to be aware of our time. We got about 4 minutes left, and I know that there's several people who have a few comments and questions for you. So I want to be sure and get to those real quick,
okay.
Aquarius. So I want to first say that Max says bass players and drummers are the backbone. He says rock and roll, and
Yep,
I think.
absolutely.
Do you know Janine Cumming?
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah, we're
Yep.
friends.
She says, "There's my friend. She's helped me so much." So make sure and hear that you hear that. And she says you put on a really, really great show too.
Thank you.
Max wants to know. So, what was your favorite gig so far, and why?
My favorite gig so far? Hmm. Well, one interesting gig that I had, and this was back when I was a teenager, is that my family band, we got to play a birthday party for a gorilla who turned 1 year old at the Dallas Zoo, and we got to be on the news.
That
So
is so cool. I love
yeah,
the
it was
Dallas
really
Zoo. I
cool.
love all the zoos, but yeah, that's so
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. I got another question from Max. He says, "What did your experience in the medical field help or hurt you with during your journey?"
It didn't hurt me. It helped me because I was able to get a second opinion without having to rely on doctors doing that for me. I was able to arrange that myself. I knew the people to talk to. And at least I knew some of the terminology. Also was able to get the best pathologists at the lab that I got the second opinion. so I felt confident in the second opinion. So at least I felt like, okay, I'm going into this, even though I don't like the diagnosis, I'm at least confident that this is what it is, and
Right.
I didn't have any doubts about that.
That's very cool. And I want to make sure while we have time, if you have any gigs coming up, tell us when and where they're at.
Well, I only have a couple of gigs coming up. One's a private gig on for 4th of July, and then the other one is July. I think it's like 20th, 21st, or 21st, 22nd, whatever that weekend is. And that one's at Euless Yacht Club. That'll be the last one that I'll do before I have my reconstruction surgery, and then I'll probably be out for a couple of months, and then of playing, and then I plan to start booking again October and the rest of the year. So I
Very
don't have
cool.
anything.
Well, I hope you'll be a part of Drumathon this year, coming up October 22nd. We'd love to have you participate.
I will
Do some
try.
fundraising, and top
Hmm.
fundraisers win thousands of dollars in drummer prizes. And we're gonna have a lot of celebrity drummers out. I'd love to have a survivor drummer sister out there with me
Yeah,
that day in
definitely.
October.
I'll
So if
try.
you're feeling up for it, it'd be really awesome.
Definitely, I will
Very
try.
cool.
But I mean,
Very cool.
I have to, I will say one thing real quick is
Yeah.
that I'm so appreciative of everyone who has ever helped me, contacted me. I mean, one thing that I'm very impressed with is the community that has really come together to support me, sharing their stories, just asking about me, being interested in, what I've been going through, praying for me. That has meant the world to me. That has really helped me get through this. So anyone that's going through this diagnosis, please know that you're not alone, that there are people out there willing to help you, willing to listen to you. And I really hope that you will take people up on their offer to do those things. Because really, before all this, I was very private about anything that happened to me. And I felt God led me to go ahead and be as transparent as I can be to hopefully help someone else.
That's solid advice, Aquarius. It really is, and I hope that you found some help within our survivor group. So it's
I have,
Survivors Rock, a breast cancer can stick it community. Aquarius and I
definitely.
are part of that group, along with a lot of other breast cancer survivors. We do have one male breast cancer survivor, Randy, in that group as well. So it does affect men as well. So
Mhm.
be sure if you are a breast cancer survivor that you check that out. And Aquarius, I'm so happy that we were able to chat tonight and get to know each other a little better and hear your story. And I'm so glad to see that you're doing well and taking good care of yourself. And hopefully, I'll see you out on the music scene.
Absolutely. I hope so. Thank
All
you
right,
so
girl.
much for having me.
You have a great evening. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
All right, guys, that was Aquarius, man. Give it up for her. Great interview there with her, learning all about her bout with breast cancer and her drumming too, which was really cool to hear. So